nearly a week after the country almost ran aground owing to the withdrawal of large amount of contaminated petrol across states. President Muhammadu Buhari, yesterday, weighed in on the crisis by ordering that producers and providers of the dirty fuel be held accountable for substandard services and products sold by them. The president also directed the relevant government agencies to take every step in line with the laws of the country to ensure the respect and protection of consumers against market abuses and social injustices. In a reaction to the issue of petroleum product shortages linked to the infiltration of adulterated petrol into Nigeria, President Buhari said the protection of consumer interests is a priority of the administration and is ready to take all necessary measures to protect consumers from hazardous products, loss or injuries from the consumption of substandard goods. A statement signed by Senior Special Assistant on Media and Publicity, Garbashu, quoted the president as also directing service providers to make full disclosure of relevant information with respect to the consumption of their products, adding that dissatisfied consumers are entitled to a proper redress in line with the law. Recall that over 100 million liters of adulterated fuel had found its way into the Nigerian market, prompting scarcity of the product as government regulatory agencies tried to mop up the bad product from the system. However, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has alleged that the All Progressives Congress, APC-led federal government had begun moves to provide official cover for its leaders allegedly involved in the criminal importation of toxic fuel into the country. The PDP demanded investigation into reports of how APC leaders allegedly connived with foreign interests to import very cheap and heavily contaminated fuel laden with methanol. In a statement by its National Publicity Secretary, Debo Alogunagba, the main opposition party said, "It is now clear that APC leaders are frenziedly seeking ways to steal money to fund their 2023 rigging scheme, since our party and well-meaning Nigerians exposed and challenged their plots to siphon a staggering and 2.557 billion padded as fuel subsidy for 2022. The PDP condemned the alleged fraud, adding the inclination for official concealment ostensibly informed the refusal by the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Temitope Silva, on national television on Wednesday, to name those involved in the importation of the poisonous fuel into our country. Against this backdrop, the PDP rejects the announced internal investigation of this terrible crime by the government as the APC administration cannot be trusted given its manifest predilection to shield the APC leaders involved. Nigerians note the various investigations instituted by the APC government in the past, which ended without any meaningful outcome, notable among which was the manipulated NSARS report, the statement added. The PDP said there is need for an independent commission of inquiry to investigate all issues connected to the APC toxic fuel import gate, adding that those involved must be exposed and held accountable. The party insisted that President Buhari, as the Minister of Petroleum Resources, cannot acquit himself with his reported comedy of anger, buck-passing, querying of subordinates and attempt by government to use some companies as scapegoats instead of accepting responsibility by exposing and naming individuals involved in the crime. Meanwhile, following the naming of 4 companies as responsible for the importation of adulterated petrol into Nigeria by the NNPC, marketers have moved to distance themselves from the controversy. Mrs. Ademedeb, yesterday, refuted the claims by NNPC on who imported the methanol-laden petrol into the country. Partners in the Amedeb/Hyde/AIM Coffee, Britannia U Consortium, which was listed among the companies by NNPC, has designed Britannia U, saying it is Britannia U rather than the consortium that was involved. A statement released by the lead partner, Amedeb Energy Services, explained that the importation of the contaminated PMS was executed by a member of the consortium, to wit, Britannia U. Therefore, the blanket claims made against the consortium by NNPC are misleading and contradict the actual events that happened. They do not fully reflect and/or represent what transpired. It is important to inform the public of these facts and provide clarifications relating to the delivery of the said contaminated PMS to the country. We also deem it necessary to protect our image as we have invested a lot in building our respective brands in the industry. The company held that Britannia U Nigeria Limited, Britannia U, was the sole supplier of the 90,000 OMT of PMS delivered via Mount to Wormhill Lake in January 2 to 4. At the formation of the consortium in May 2021 by NNPC, Britannia U refused to execute the service and consortium agreement submitted to NNPC in fulfillment of the award of the DSTP contract. MADEB, as the lead of the consortium, engaged Britannia U severally and they insisted on dealing with NNPC independently. NNPC was expressly notified about this by the other consortium members via a letter dated June 2, 2021, it clarified. On its part, Mrs. claimed that the petrol brought into its facilities was imported by Duke-Oil, a subsidiary of the NNPC. According to the company, due to subsidy regime, NNPC is the sole supplier of all PMS in Nigeria. Consequently, NNPC through their trading arm, Duke-Oil, supplied a cargo of PMS purchased from international trader, Lightisco, and delivered to it with motor tanker, Mont, Nordgainer. While the marketers continue to trade blames, petrol shortage showed no sign of abating in Lagos and Abuja, as most stations were shut with the liter of petrol selling at N350 per litre from the N250 it sold at the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, since Tuesday. Checks showed that while few major marketers were selling, albeit with fewer pumps, creating long queues, most independent marketers had no product to dispense. Also, the Nigerian Association of Road Transport Owners, NARTO, has insisted that unless the federal government addressed its concern over low freight rate, its members would withdraw their truck from transporting petrol across the country. National President of NARTO, Yusuf Othman, who addressed newsmen in Abuja yesterday, explained that though mindful that such action would compound the prevailing shortage, it is impossible to continue to operate at a loss. Othman stated that while the cost of their operation has risen sharply over the years, government has failed to effect the necessary upward review for transporters. Last year, government had promised to review freight rate from N7 to N9.11, but failed to fulfill the promise, NARTO stated. Despite assurances from government that petrol would be available this weekend, NARTO urged Nigerians to brace up for scarcity of the product, as its members would stop operation owing to the high cost of transporting PMS on the roads. He said 98% of petroleum products are transported by road, with the pipelines not being operational for years, while the railways, despite their rehabilitation, are yet to commence lifting of products. He said truck replacement and operational costs, which keeps growing exponentially, are now unbearable, as they involve the use of foreign exchange to acquire them, which transporters must source by themselves since they are not beneficiaries of the government official forex allocation. The Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria, HURIWA, has, however, urged NNPC to name and shame the corporate bodies allegedly responsible for the importation of bad fuel into Nigeria. The rights group also said the defaulting companies should be dragged to court by government if they fail to compensate their victims. In a statement issued yesterday in Abuja by its national coordinator, Comrade Emmanuel Onwubiko, and National Media Affairs Director, Ms. Zainab Yusuf, HURIWA encouraged the federal government to work out and enforce systematic compensations of claims that may result from the use of the toxic fuel by Nigerians. The statement reads, urging that the stiffest sanctions be imposed on the culprits. The central government has been commended for handling the national scandal of importation of toxic petrol into Nigeria, with an uncommon openness and transparency. This openness and transparency is commendable and should be sustained going forward. HURIWA called on the importers to spare Nigerians of needless brickbats and media war and enter into constructive dialogues with government and victims of their bad fuel on issues of compensations to stave off huge legal damages that may come up if the victims are forced to go to court.
Almost 2 weeks after receiving the re-amended 2010 Electoral Act, Amendment, Bill 2022 from the National Assembly, President Muhammadu Buhari, appears to be in a fix on signing the document into law. Buhari Senior Special Assistant on National Assembly Matters, Senate, Senator Babajide Mawere, who spoke yesterday in Abuja, said the president was receiving consultations from the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, and other stakeholders on the way forward for the bill. He said, "A very crucial consultation is going on between Mr. President, Attorney General and other critical stakeholders on the content of the bill for the required assent. If not for this program, I am supposed to be at the very important meeting, believed to be the major determinant for the fate of the bill." He, however, assured Nigerians that the bill would most likely be assented to by the president since issues earlier raised by him in the 2021 edition were elaborately addressed by both chambers of the National Assembly in January. "Personally, I think in few days' time, Mr. President will do the needful since the most contentious aspect of the bill had been addressed in the reworked one transmitted to him on Monday, January 31, 2022. Time is of essence, but I believe that Mr. President will do the needful," he said. But the assurance given by Mawere was not enough to douse the apprehension entertained by conveners of the dialogue who received message from the AGF that his planned consultation with President Buhari prevented him from coming. Virtually all the discussants at the policy dialogue, from former chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Tahiru Jega, country representative of Westminster Foundation for Democracy, Adba'allah Aranmola, and chairman, House of Representatives Committee on Media, Benjamin Kalu, appealed to President Buhari to assent to the bill without further delay. Jega in particular said no law or legislation is perfect, but that what was made available now by the lawmakers is good and manageable for the coming elections. Representative of INEC at the discourse, Professor Bole Diamla, said to avoid the problem of working on electoral laws at the tail end of conducting elections, INEC should be allowed to drive the process as is done in Ghana. The situation at hand now is that roughly a year to the general election, the anticipated laws are not yet approved, meaning that the extant one will be used aside the fact that the process has not enabled INEC to come up with clear-cut guidelines for conduct of the elections, he lamented. Meanwhile, the Transition Monitoring Group, TMG, National Consultative Front, NC Front, and Middle Belt Forum, MBF, yesterday, expressed worry over President Buhari's delay to assent to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. They wondered why the bill was still lying on the president's desk, about 10 days after the National Assembly reworked it to include the three primary options, including direct, indirect and consensus, which President Buhari observed were not in the first bill transmitted to him. Awali Ibrahim Musa Rafsanjani, Executive Director Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center CISLEC, and Chairman Transition Monitoring Group, said President Buhari has proved himself to be untrustworthy by delaying assent to the bill after the lawmakers worked on the areas he pointed out. He said, "President Buhari is just telling us that he doesn't care about the country and doesn't care about anybody. It is sad and unfortunate that a president who talks so much about integrity is challenging that integrity. Integrity is about honesty and being consistent." The president pointed out areas he wanted to be corrected before he signs the bill. Those areas have been corrected and he is still delaying assent. This will really put the Independent National Electoral Commission in a difficult position to conduct the election. On his part, the NC Front convener and a former presidential advisor, Professor Pat Utomi, said the delay and claims that the president was consulting on the bill before he takes necessary action shows that something was amiss. President Buhari withheld assent to the amended bill initially transmitted to him in November 2021 and insisted that it restricted the mode for political parties to choose candidates for election to direct primary mode, which he said was undemocratic. Utomi, however, faulted the position of the president and noted that his understanding of democracy is that the president should consult the party and the people on issues that needed action. President of the MBF, Dr. Baidaraspogu noted that it was too early to take a definite stand on why the assent is delayed, as Buhari has 30 days to do so. But, a lawyer and former president of Akanga, Chief Gadi Uwazirike, said President Buhari is playing a power game and alleged an attempt by those who think they own Nigeria to manipulate the system. Also, the House of Representatives has said that there was no selfish interest in the Electoral Act amendment bill passed by the National Assembly, recently. Chairman, House Committee on Media and Publicity, Benjamin Kalu, stated this while fielding questions from journalists, yesterday, in Abuja. He said the National Assembly will not lobby the presidency to assent to the Electoral Act amendment bill, as that would amount to interfering with the function of the executive. We are three arms of government. Though we are three, we are one government, and it will be interfering within the parameters of our mandate not to allow them the independency as proposed by the Constitution. They should be allowed the free hand to make decisions based on what we have proffered as a reflection of the wishes, hunger and desire of the common Nigerians. The executive should be able to trust the parliament enough to know that what we speak remains the voice of the people and not our own voices. Kalu said the National Assembly was guided by public interest in enacting laws, and that the lawmakers had given Nigerians the electoral law they sought for. In view of the dynamics of the society, challenges we have experienced, the 2010 Electoral Act is obsolete, and therefore, can no longer meet the demands, expectations, ethos and principles of democracy. If we are serious about advancing our democracy, we should stop playing to the gallery. We should do what the public interest says. And what is the public interest? That they want the Electoral Act amendment bill, as submitted, having incorporated the direct, indirect and consensus. Let us move on, and that's not selfish interest. That's public interest, he said. Whatever actions that we take, motions moved, resolution and bills that we make not as unto ourselves to the exclusion of others, we make them to the generality of Nigerians, because for now, we are members of the parliament. Who knows, tomorrow, we might be in the executive or even be outside the government. The laws we make today will be there to govern us in time to come as citizens of this country. So, the element of selfishness should be removed from our ideas on this particular piece of legislation.
2 policemen and a civilian have been confirmed dead after armed robbers attacked a bullion van conveying money from a bank on Iwo Road to the Adape area of Ibadan, Oyo State. The incident happened around 1:35 p.m. on Thursday in the Adape area, where the robbers reportedly waylaid a bullion van. Eyewitnesses said that the bullion van was heading towards the gate area of Ibadan when the armed hoodlums, who were in a Toyota Sienna, overtook the van and opened fire on the occupants and the police escorts. One of the victims reportedly killed was an Okada rider who was oblivious of the mission of the occupants of the Sienna. The commercial motorcyclist, who was said to be in a hurry, reportedly attempted to overtake the hoodlums' vehicle when he was shot dead by the robbers. But some residents also said the escorts engaged the robbers in a shootout, adding that the hoodlums outnumbered the operatives and killed 2 of them. Some motorists, who were unlucky to be at the scene, reportedly sustained gunshot injuries. A man, who was driving in a sport utility vehicle, was said to have been hit by a bullet in the upper arm and was rushed to a hospital after the robbers left. A resident, who identified himself as Walid Gok, said the robbers carted away huge sums of money from the bullion van. He said, the armed robbers attacked a bullion van conveying money from a bank to another one at Adape. It happened at a junction close to the traffic light. Some lives were lost, including innocent persons. I saw 2 policemen on the ground after the armed robbers left. 2 of them died and 1 was seriously wounded. Some persons were also injured in their vehicles, and those who managed to escape from their vehicles hid inside the drainage. There was blood everywhere and people were weeping, as residents trooped out to rush the victims to hospitals. There were spent bullets on the road and persons were killed. I saw 2 policemen on the ground shot and they had apparently died. The State Commissioner of Police, Ngozi Onyeiko, while speaking to journalists after the incident, described the attack as a coordinated one. Later, the CP, in a statement made available to the press, confirmed that 3 persons, including 2 policemen, were killed. The armed robbers engaged the police officers escorting the bullion van, and in the process, an undisclosed amount of money was carted away. In a swift response, the police equally neutralized one of the armed robbers, while some were believed to have escaped with multiple gunshot injuries. Consequently, a civilian onlooker was hit by a stray bullet and died at the scene, while 2 police officers later died in the hospital as a result of gunshot injuries. 4 others, including 2 police officers, are responding to treatment. The citizenry are hereby enjoined not to panic as efforts are in top gear to track down and apprehend the criminal gang.
The House of Representatives Thursday mandated its committees on petroleum resources, downstream, to investigate the release of adulterated premium motor spirit across the country with a view to ensuring that culprits are brought to book. The resolution was taken following the adoption of a motion of urgent importance sponsored by the Chief Whip, Honorable Mohammed Tahir Manguno, APC, Borno. The regulatory agencies to be investigated include the Nigerian National Petroleum Company, NNPC, Limited, the Nigeria Customs Service, NCS, the Standard Organization of Nigeria, SON, and the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NPRA. Presenting the motion, Manguno noted that recently, the country witnessed a sudden scarcity of premium motor spirit, PMS, with the attendant long queues at petrol stations, especially in the Federal Capital Territory and Lagos State. He said that according to reports, the scarcity was as a result of adulterated petrol in circulation, upon the discovery of which the federal government ordered the stoppage of further distribution of the product. Aware that poor quality product was noticed about a week ago when many car engines of motorists were reportedly damaged and consumers allegedly started arresting and suing retail outlet owners for selling them products which damaged their vehicles. Also aware that Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, NPRA, which replaced the defunct Petroleum Products Pricing Regulatory Agency, PRA, are directly responsible for monitoring and enforcing compliance in the nation's downstream sector, including technical, operational, and commercial activities, he submitted. The lawmaker expressed concern that adulteration of liquid petroleum products is an illegal and clandestine practice, which poses severe risks to public health and automobile engine quality among others. Also concerned that the sudden scarcity of premium motor spirit across the country has not only caused untold hardship to Nigerians, but also affected the county's economy with the sudden increase in transportation cost, which in turn affects the price of goods and services and the loss of man-hours as people are held up in fuel queues. Supporting the motion, Honorable Onofiak Luke, PDP, Akwa Ibom, lamented that the incident had brought hardship and pains on Nigerians. He said there was the need to pay adequate compensation to victims of the dastard act, adding that many of his constituents have been calling to complain that their vehicles' engines were knocked or their fuel pumps were malfunctioning. The Deputy Minority Leader, Honorable Toby Akachukwu, PDP, Enugu, in his contribution berated the regulatory agencies, saying they have failed in their responsibilities. He equally called for the compensation of those whose vehicles have been damaged due to the use of the adulterated fuel. Similarly, Chairman of the Rules and Business Committee, Honorable Abubakar Fulada, APC, Jigawa, stated that the importation of the toxic substance was a deliberate act and not accidental. He called for punishment for the perpetrators of the act and for a full-scale investigation.
Following the alarm raised over damage of vehicles by imported premium motor spirit, PMS, blended with methanol. Investigations have dispelled the rumbling misconceptions over the dangers of PMS blended with methanol on cars in Nigeria. It would be recalled that PMS blended with methanol discovered by a petroleum marketing firm at its 8 filling stations were hurriedly isolated after a laboratory test for methanol revealed presence of 20% content. This development had resulted in controversy and blame game. Methanol Blending Technical Product Bulletin exclusively obtained by Nigerian News Direct describes methanol as a clean-burning high-octane blending component for gasoline that is made from alternative non-petroleum energy sources such as natural gas, coal and biomass. It states that methanol with co-solvents has been commercially blended into gasoline or PMS since the late 1970s of commercial experience and research. The bulletin explains also that unlike some alcohols, methanol blending in gasoline has been economical without government subsidies or fuel blending mandates. Hence, the experts advise the management of Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, Limited to create awareness about the benefits of the product and encourage the utilization through effective handling as a cleaner fuel source, as they were of the opinion that, indeed, methanol is a key component of petroleum motor spirit, PMS, in developed countries. Outside Nigeria such as Europe, methanol remains a major source of fueling. For instance, in a scientific article published on the European Union Research and Innovative magazine, titled Why Raising Alcohol Content of Europe's Fuels Could Reduce Carbon Emissions written by Richard Gray, it was made clear that ethanol derived from plants, is one of the modern part of efforts to make the fuels in vehicles more environmentally friendly. In key parts of Europe, an average PMS sold at pumps is a mixture of 5% bioethanol and 95% gasoline, denoted by an E5 label. In other countries, the level has moved to a new generation of fuel that contains up to 10% bioethanol, otherwise known E10. In a research christened by the European Committee for Standardization, CEN, carried out to find out the costs and benefits of using a fuel containing 20% bioethanol, or E20, indicated that the conclusion we have reached is that all the vehicles coming onto the market and those since 2011 should be able to handle fuels with up to 20% ethanol. A senior standardization consultant at the Royal Netherlands Standardization Institute, NEN, Ortwin Kosnobel, who led the project, said. Their findings further shows that we were working on the basis that in 2030, countries would adopt E20 as the main source of fuel. Currently, the majority of EU member states use E5 petrol in their vehicles. Some countries, however, have started moving to E10. In January 2022, Denmark, Hungary, Lithuania and Slovakia became the latest countries to introduce E10 to their forecourts, bringing the total number of EU member states to sell the fuel at the majority of retail stations to 13. It is rather than unfortunate that companies are now being maligned, including the NNPC, for what can best be handled with proper education, especially as the GMD of NNPC Limited himself, in his press release, said the product met the approved specifications for the country. Analysts argued, what then is the wrongdoing that has warranted all the media buzz, creating unnecessary panic and misinformation? It is therefore the opinion of industry analysts that no one should be reprimanded for the importation of PMS blended with methanol. It's just a bad batch of product which could happen anywhere in the world.
The Central Bank of Nigeria has revealed that it will stop the sale of foreign exchange to deposit money banks by the end of the year. According to the CBN Governor, Godwin Emefiele, banks must begin to source their forex from export proceeds, hence the need to support non-oil exporters in the country. He pointed out that the decision was in line with the Apex Bank's new commitment to boost the country's foreign reserves through proceeds from non-oil exports. He made this known at a press briefing on the launch of the bank's new Forex repatriation scheme, RT200, held after the Bankers Committee meeting on Thursday in Abuja. RT200, which stands for Race to $200 billion, is a set of policies, plans and programs for non-oil exports that will enable the country to generate $200 billion in Forex repatriation, exclusively from non-oil exports, over the next 3 to 5 years. According to the governor. Under the program, which is to take effect immediately, the Apex Bank will provide concessionary and long-term loans for businesses interested in expanding existing plants or building new ones for the sole purpose of adding significant value to the non-oil commodities before exporting same. The governor said the loans would have 10-year tenure, with a 2-year moratorium and an interest rate of 5%. Similar to the Naira for Dollar program, This program, he said, would also entail a Forex rebate scam where the exporters will be paid in 5 for every dollar they put into the economy. Today, we are also announcing the introduction of the non-oil FX rebate scheme, a special local currency rebate scam for non-oil exporters of semi-finished and finished produce who show verifiable evidence of exports proceeds repatriation sold directly into the IND window to boost liquidity in the market, MFEL revealed. In recognition of the perennial problems of port congestion cited by exporters as a major impediment to improved operations and foreign exchange earnings, MFEL noted that the CBN plans to establish a dedicated non-oil export terminal. He also said that the Bankers Committee would be partnering with state governments that have existing ports to achieve this goal, adding that the committee would provide a significant part of the funding needed for the project. The bank also announced that it would host the main event of a biannual non-oil export summit which will hold in the first week of April. The banks don't have choice, and I said so this morning in the meeting. I said they're aware because a bank needs $100 million foreign exchange or $200 million, they will bring the request to the CBN to fulfill, is coming to an end. Before or latest by the end of this year, DMBs will not come to the CBN for foreign exchange again. They should go and generate their export proceeds. Fund people who want to generate non-oil export proceeds. When the proceeds come, we will fund them at 5% for you. The proceeds will earn rebates. That is how we can help you. But when those proceeds come, sell the proceeds to importers. Don't come to the CBN for the dollars because we will stop providing. We will stop it, the governor said. He however noted that the banks might be able to access a portion of their forex demands from the CBN if they could provide impressive exports promotion records. Or maybe if they are lucky, if the bank approaches us for forex, if we see their exports record, we will give them 5 or 10% of that request, MFEL noted. Meanwhile, the governor also announced that interest rates on its intervention loans, which were expected to revert to 9% by March 1, would remain at 5% until March 1, 2023. Although interest rates on our various intervention facilities were expected to revert to 9% effective March 1, 2022, we are announcing that the rates would remain at 5% for another year in view of the promising trajectory we have established in economic growth and job creation. In effect, the concessionary interest rate of 5% on our intervention facilities would now be extended until March 1, 2023, MFEL clarified.